Welcome to our AuthorConnect Chat. I am your host, Danielle Brown. As head of strategic partnerships and editorial, I work with authors, publishers, agents, publicists, and other incredible industry partners here at BookPal, where we believe in the transformative power of books to ignite continuous learning and growth. Stick around for more announcements at the end of this chat, including the winners of 3 signed books. But for now, let's get to the good stuff. Our guest today is an Inc. 5000 serial entrepreneur, a TEDx speaker, and a business coach who works with organizations and their leaders to help them overcome self-limiting bullshit and use honesty to achieve greatness. His articles on leadership and entrepreneurship have appeared in Forbes, Inc., HuffPost, PR Daily, and more. He is here to talk about his book, Honest to Greatness: How Today's Greatest Leaders Use Brutal Honesty to Achieve Massive Success. Please welcome Peter Kozodoy.
Hey everyone, great to be here. Thanks for having me. Danielle, thank you so much.
Yes, Peter, thank you so much for being here. We're so lucky to have you on this series and to be talking about your book, Honest to Greatness. So obviously we can get kind of the premise there that honesty is the key to success, but what inspired this journey? Why are we talking about honesty?
Yeah, well, the thing, Danielle, about writing a book about honesty is I kind of have to be honest. So I will tell you that I never set out to write about, speak about, or frankly, even care about honesty. Wasn't on my mind at all. I actually sat down to write a marketing book. I founded a marketing agency when I was 22 out of college in 2008, which is just the best time to graduate, right, as the financial world is crumbling around us. And, clawed and scratched our way eventually to, as you noted, the Inc. 5000 list. And along the way, we worked with startups to the Fortune 500 and even Mr. Warren Buffett himself. And I was shocked and dismayed throughout all those years working with all those types of organizations, how they just didn't bring any sort of honesty into their communications. Now, not all of them, right? Warren's actually a great example of someone who does appreciate the core value of honesty and puts it into his businesses. But what was interesting is I sat down to write a marketing book, frustrated at the fact that these organizations couldn't just bring out who they really were, be honest with their customers, and to put it bluntly, to just stop BSing everyone around into a vision of what they thought they were or think they should be, and actually just, tell it like it is, like we as human beings prefer, right? I mean, it's just like you and I are having a conversation and I start BSing you, you're going to be like, this guy, I can't trust him, don't know where he's coming from, trying to sell me, feels icky. We know this sort of intrinsically, right? It's in our DNA. So, I queried a bunch of literary agents. Many of them didn't get back to me. Many others said no. Some even told me I would never publish a book and this was a terrible idea and it would never work. But I did get one agent. And as soon as he signed me, he said, Peter, I just have to tell you that this isn't really a book about marketing. It's a book about honesty. And I said, well, then clearly I've hired the only literary agent who can't read because, look at the title. It has nothing to do with honesty. What are you talking about? And of course, as with many things in life, I was wrong and they were right. And as I looked at it, I began to realize that this goes much beyond how we communicate on a corporate level. It has to do with what we believe as a society, how we consumers buy in a world where everyone has all the information they need at their fingertips, and we're flipping through reviews. And Volkswagen gets outed for their diesel emissions scandal, and Wells Fargo gets outed for its fake account scandal. And we just have all these things come to light. And in that world, why would you do anything but be honest? And so that's sort of how this book, what became Honest to Greatness, was born. And now that is sort of the soapbox that I stand on, helping organizations and their teams realize that if they're not embracing honesty and what I call, that I'm sure we'll get into, strategic, brutal honesty, then what the hell are we talking about here? Like, what are we even debating and making strategic decisions on if we're not going to get to the truth in the first place?
I love that you're trying to shift the narrative because we do hear about all of these scandals and the problems where honesty wasn't there, but now we're combating that with trying to celebrate instances of honesty or brutal honesty and make that more important in the conversation. So how did this all relate to marketing for you? And how did you incorporate that into the marketing that you were really trying to teach with this book?
Yeah, well, and now that's just one slice. I mean, I tell the whole part two of three in the book is dedicated to how do you implement this stuff, not only in marketing but in sales and leadership, in communications internally, right? And of course with marketing. But by way of quick story, take a look at Domino's Pizza. Right? Have you ever had Domino's Pizza? Delicious, right? So back in 2007, 2008, Domino's figured out that it was having a problem. It was going out to its consumers and running regular surveys. How are we doing? How does the pizza taste? And the surveys were coming back that the pizza just wasn't that good, right? So the new chief marketing officer was seeing this data. And he thought to himself, well, this is probably not going to go that well, but I have two problems, right? Very smart guy. Said one of these problems is that consumers aren't liking the product that we're putting out. But the other problem is that I have to now convince the rest of my C-suite executives that we probably need to do something about this, right? Very clever. And this is sort of how we take honesty, this nebulous concept, and bring it into strategic, brutal honesty, right? Honesty as a strategy to achieve growth. So knowing this, he went out and he surveyed his fellow executives. What do you think about the pizza? What do you think we should change? And then he was able to hold those results side by side and say, listen, here's what we believe. Here's what all our customers are saying, with statistical models. So we have a choice here. We can do nothing and probably just descend into oblivion, or we can do something. What's interesting, Danielle, is they didn't just do something. If you remember, about 2009, 2010, the brand new CEO, J. Patrick Doyle, went on national television and said, I'm sorry, America. Turns out our pizza sucks and you deserve better. And guess what? We're going to do better. And they brought cameras into their kitchens. They brought cameras into their meetings. They brought cameras out to ordinary customers with their new pizza they were trying. Say, hey, try this. Do you like it? Do you like it better than the other? What do you think? They took all those videos and they threw them up online. Now, Danielle, if you had looked at this television commercial and thought to yourself, gee whiz, there's a CEO getting paid tens of millions of dollars to go on national television and tell everyone that his product is terrible. Wow, what a great company. I'm going to invest in them. If you had had that thought, gee, at least they're being honest, right? And had invested in them, you would have had a 3,000% return over the next 10 years, as Domino's just kept getting honest about who it really was, what it needed to do, and honest with its customers about, hey, we messed up. I'm sorry. And we're going to do this better, and we want to be transparent about that. This is so simple, right, Danielle? I mean, this works just like two friends. Hey, I'm sorry. I think I offended you. I apologize. I want to be a better person. Here's what I'm doing, and help me make sure I don't offend you again, right? And what do we do as human beings? Usually, not all the time, usually we don't kick someone else when they're down. We say, wow, okay, self-awareness, thank you for your honesty, right? That's why we have that phrase in the English language. Thank you for your honesty. So you can be able to see, through that one of many case studies, how Domino's had these choices, and they could have done what I've seen so many companies do. Sweep it under the rug. Let's change our crust a little bit and put out a commercial. Oh, it's brand new. Come try it, right? It's bullshit. And look what they were able to do by just stripping it down and saying, you know what, let's tell it like it is. Cleverly, this is my last point. Cleverly, they realized they were in the middle of the financial crisis, right, of what was going on in 2008. At a time, remember, when bank CEOs were getting bailed out, there was a massive rising income inequality that was happening. People didn't know who to trust. There have been lots of mistakes made in both the banking system and the government system. And here Domino's was bravely just telling it like it is, right? And that's why in the book I talk through that strategy. What's going on in the world? What's going on with the people around you? For him, his executives. And finally, what's going on with ourselves? With our own biases and egos and self-limiting beliefs. And that's the model that I teach to executive groups, executive teams, organizations that teach executives how to be better leaders, not necessarily ethical leaders, but effective leaders. And right now, it just so happens that those two things are intertwined.
That is such a great example of everything that you're talking about and how it can be celebrated rather than just smothered or shut down, because I can just imagine how many scenarios if someone went to their C-suite and said, hey, our product is not good, we need to do something about it. And we have this phrase of make it, don't fake it, just rampant in our culture, in American culture, and in corporate culture, especially. What is the strategy that someone can use in a position of leadership to try to fight that urge, to fight that default, if you will, with honesty?
One of the best points, and this comes back to Warren Buffett too, because he's a big practitioner of this, is what are we trying to achieve here? If we're trying to achieve a short-term goal, I'm going to sell this widget to you and I'm never going to see you again, right? Then, yeah, you can tell anyone anything you want. The problem is twofold. One, if you want any kind of long-term success, then that value of a reputation really, really matters. If I want to sell you the second time and third time, I want you to refer your friends to me, I want to do this the right way with a long-term focus, I have to be honest with you, right? And honest about you, about your needs and what you're going through. And we'll get into that, I'm sure, in a little bit. But this is what's made Warren Buffett so successful. He's thinking and investing on very long-term time horizons. Meanwhile, when you think about, especially publicly traded companies, they're trying to hit short-term quarterly results. Well, those two things are diametrically opposed in many ways. And there have been a lot of calls to change that system because it allows companies to sweep things under the rug, to clean up some of their financial statements so they look different than they really are. And this is how we get these types of scandals that I was referencing earlier, right? And I see small businesses, by the way, make these same mistakes, thinking short term when it comes to customers and communications. By the way, this is how the car dealer industry wrecked itself. This is why we have jokes about car salespeople, right? And why are we judging them that way? Because they have sort of thrived on that sort of short-term thinking instead of long-term. So that's number one, right? Is what, as a business person, right? As a business book, if you own a business, you run a business, you're a middle manager, even you're a frontline employee, okay? There are different ways to use honesty within the organization. And at the end of the day, this is about people. So in one of the 3 levels of strategic brutal honesty that I teach, it's honest with and about others. This is where strategy really comes into play, because sometimes, as we talked about with Domino's, we have to be honest with people, right? We have to level with them. I messed up, I'm sorry. Here's what's going on, right? But other times, Danielle, we have to be honest about people, right? Some of the folks watching this have kids. If you are a parent, ask yourself, is it a really good idea to just blurt out the truth to your kids all the time, no matter what? Probably not, right? Why is that, right? Or why shouldn't we just blurt out the truth to our employees or whatever? In fact, as I was writing this book and telling some folks about it, they were like, oh, that's so great. I'm so honest. I tell everyone like it is, and I just don't care. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. You're probably not honest. You're probably just being a jerk, right? That's not what I'm talking about, right? I'm not talking about just blurting it all out there. Sometimes we have to be honest about people. That's what happened. That's the clever thing that happened in the Domino's case, right? He was honest about his fellow executives and said to himself, I need to do a good job politically collecting what's in their minds, forming camaraderie, forming group consensus. And so I talk a lot about how to do that in the book, how to convince people using honesty by being honest about them, right? Their ego, their biases, their self-limiting beliefs, and being able to systematically prove otherwise or shift opinion. How? With data, right? Hard to ignore numbers, and hard to ignore numbers that are well-researched and well put together. Using groups of people, right? Oftentimes I'll work with groups of middle managers or even frontline employees who sometimes feel helpless, right? Well, how can I do this and get to, the gatekeeper above me? And I say, well, if you walk into your boss's office and you say, hey, I think you're an idiot and you're wrong and we need to be honest about these things, we're probably going to get fired. I would not recommend that, right? Nor, by the way, do you want to walk into their office with this book and say like, hey, I think you really need to read this one. It's about honesty. Again, probably going to get you fired, right? Like, thank you for the referral, but not the way to do it. Instead, right, you want to walk in with a group of people, and a group of people that consists of folks with diverse viewpoints, who come together as a coalition to make positive change, right? So that's another device that really anyone in the corporate ladder up and down can use to make sure that these ideas get introduced in a way that doesn't assault people's ego and belief system. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how honest we are if it's not for results. That's what this book is, Danielle. Like, look, I think the book premiered as the #1, new release in ethics on Amazon, right? That's wonderful. I think people should be ethical and moral and all that crap. Like, great, right? Good for society. This is not an ethics book. That's not why I wrote this book. I wrote this book because it is not only possible, but formulaic to use strategic brutal honesty to achieve outcomes. And, it all ties back to what I've been saying, the whole time we've been together today, which is think about this interpersonally. Think about this between two people, and it makes so much sense. Oh yeah, if I want a long-term relationship with this person, then I want to help them understand things in a new light. I need to be honest with them. I need to be honest about them. I need to be honest about what's going on in the world. In fact, I released the book during the pandemic, so I was on a lot of local news shows around the country talking about strategic brutal honesty, and the question I would get was about mask wearing and mask mandates, because that was like just so fresh, right? Mm-hmm. And at the time, I was making the point that, when have you ever believed something, right? And someone walked up to you and said, hey, I think everything you believe is wrong and you're a moron, and here's why, and I want you to change your behavior now. And imagine someone walked up to you and said that. What would you say to them? Would you be like, oh my gosh, I am a moron. Thank you so much for pointing that out. I definitely need to change my behavior. Like, oh, so smart. Thank you. Right? Never happens. And yet here we were when this whole mask mandate thing kicked in. We took up sides, and one side telling the other side, what are you, stupid? Why are you wearing masks? Can't believe you're wearing masks. And the other side, same thing. Can't believe you're not wearing masks. How could you be so, insane and insensitive and all this? That doesn't work, right? Instead, I was just encouraging people to be honest about them, about their ego barriers, and start to reduce those. How? Well, one way is just to ask questions. Hey, I noticed you're not wearing a mask. Tell me about that. What are you reading? What are you watching? What made you come to that conclusion? What am I missing, right? Totally different question. Because how do we know that we're right? This is not about our truth, right? I'm living my truth. I hate that phrase. That doesn't make any sense, right? That's how each one of us has our own truth, and we never come to common ground. That's part of the divisiveness we have in our that we have in our society today. Instead, let's assume we're wrong, just like all the CEOs in my book do, and operate from that standpoint. I mean, think about Ray Dalio, the CEO of the largest hedge fund in the world. The first line of his book, and I have a great case study on him. He's kind enough to give me an interview. One of the first lines of his book is, I'm a dumb shit. He literally operates from that standpoint that I'm stupid, I don't know anything, teach me. Bethany Frankel went from Real Housewives in New York to selling a 9-figure alcohol business. How? Because she's always telling people, like, I don't know. What does that mean? I don't get it. All the time. And imagine how much we could learn if we take up that much more honest posture.
Yeah, you covered so much, and I love it because you touched on ethics, but also humility. And I feel like it is this wonderful line of saying it's not personal, it's business. And that's why we're being honest and talking about the facts. But it also is personal because it's about that personal interaction, about that interpersonal relationship, even if it is some conglomerate speaking to a nationwide or international audience, that is still personal and business, so interwoven. And I think it's so important to think of it that way. And when we look at the more one-to-one, and I know you suggested bringing a group with you to maybe address a situation if you need to, so you kind of all can talk about it amiably together. What do you do when someone just does not want to hear your honesty? And like we said, there's a line between honesty and just being rude. But if you are approaching it from the right perspective and with humility and all of that, but someone just does not want to hear those words, what do you do?
Yeah, well, I mean, question number one is, what are their incentives? If they want the same end goal as you, then it's possible to change a mind, right? Assuming you're right. So question number one is, how can I make sure that my position or my strategy or my interpretation is even correct in the first place? How do I know that's true and they're not correct and I'm just barking up the wrong tree because of my own ego, right? Second, after that is, what are their incentives? So often, unfortunately, in, I'd say, mid-size to enterprise companies, there's a culture of job preservation, right? They have a core value of something like, we're entrepreneurial, but really they're completely risk averse. And it's all about job preservation, not making a mistake, so on and so forth, right? So just understanding that incentive, oh, this person doesn't want to get fired, they don't want to rock the boat, maybe they're retiring in a year and they're just lazy, right? That's okay. But if you want to achieve outcomes with or around that person, then again, let's be honest about that. We need to accommodate them and their position in order to get what we want, right? Babies understand this. Like little kids understand this, right? They learn to manipulate their parents and do it very well, because I don't think they have all the other, like, they don't care, like, are people going to like me, right? They don't have all these other like social norms floating around their head.
They don't care about their reputation with their parents.
Don't care. But we can learn something from them though, because they're very good at spotting incentives. And that's something where I've had teams say, like, I can't get around this person. Like, have you asked that person, like, what are you trying to do here? And how can I help you achieve that? Because I have goals. I think things would benefit the company. I need your support, right? You talked about humility earlier. Let's be honest. Like, I need your help in this. I can understand why you don't want to do it, but I don't know that I have the full picture. So tell me, what do you hate about it? What don't you like about it? What would you do differently? Sometimes that's what it takes, and not sometimes, a lot of times. And like you said, it's business, it's personal. As long as we're persons, it's always personal. If we're not realizing, and I drill this into executives that I coach, like, you're never managing people, you are managing egos. And as soon as you realize that, you can really achieve some incredible things within your own company and motivating teams.
Yeah, definitely. So on that, this was really the last question I wanted to ask is, how can leaders cultivate a culture of honesty in the workplace? How can they make that an open environment where people can be honest with each other as well as with the leader themselves?
Yeah, so it depends on where you are, of course. If you're at the top of an organization or at the top of a segment or whatever, and you're managing a team, you can push this top down immediately, right? Have everyone read the book, sit around, talk about it, put up all of the frameworks and diagrams I have and ask yourselves, like, let's run through this. What are we missing here? Are we really living this? If we follow this to the T, here are our values. We say those are our values. Here's how we're living them. Where are the gaps? Those kinds of things. Where are the gaps in knowledge of what our customers think about us and what we think of each other and what other divisions think about it, right? Like, all this information that usually we don't want to know, our sensitive egos don't want to know, we need to get a hold of that, right? So if you're at the top, you push it down. That's easy. Much different and a little more difficult from the middle or from the bottom up, right? So again, you know what I love to do, Danielle? Blame other people. And that, honestly, this is one of the best things I've seen work with folks that end up reaching out to me, is they're like, Peter, loved your message. We need a whole lot more honesty in the organization. We dance around all these topics and we never exactly achieve the goal. We all feel like we're wasting our time because we're kind of floating around over here and we know we should be over there. This is great. And I say, cool, here's what I want you to do. I want you to blame me, right? I saw this guy and I read his book and, he said this and he said that. I don't even know if I agree with it, but what do you guys think? That'd be interesting. You want to run through one of the exercises, see what happens? Start with your close people that you think would be like, oh yeah, that does sound good. We do need a lot more of that. And build a coalition. Build a coalition. This is sort of one of the odd things I talk about and I workshop with folks, is sometimes we have to act politically to act honestly. And this is what you do in Washington. We go around, cull some votes, right? It's like, do you agree fundamentally that we need to make change? Do you agree fundamentally that we could benefit from some of these frameworks and some of the ideas we could come up with if we just cut the BS and be honest with each other? And slowly over time, when you build out 3, 4, 5 people that are interested, and then you start to go to the person in charge, say, hey, like, we have a ton of ideas. It's around these frameworks in this book. Can we present them to you for 5, 10 minutes? We think they would help you achieve your goals. super important. We think they would help you achieve your goals. Deep empathy, that's part of honesty, right? That's, it's probably a good kind of move to end before we take questions, Danielle. Is like, the big question here is like, what is honesty exactly, right? And I frustrate people because I never answer it, because it's not my job, right? Sometimes it's empathy. Sometimes it's introspection. Sometimes it's realizing who you really are and what you really want in life. Sometimes it's just being direct. It changes, and it's some of that, and it's one piece of that, and it's all of that, depending on what you're trying to achieve in business or in life. So anyway, I'll leave that there.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I feel like the biggest takeaway that I am pulling from this, I mean, there are so many amazing things that you're saying, but I love how just everything is centered around asking questions, because it really is interwoven with empathy and having to take a step back, take your own ego down a bit, ask questions, accept that you don't know everything, accept that you're not there to go talk at someone in every situation. And you need to ask questions in order to know how to be honest, how to communicate effectively with that person or with that audience or whatever it is. So I really love that that's at the heart of everything. And it makes so much sense of just really trying to infiltrate every element of your business and element of your workday with honesty. So thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Think of the company you could build and the society you could build full of humans that behave exactly as the way you just described. It's a game changer.
Definitely. Yeah. That is our last official question for the day. But Peter, what is the best way for viewers to connect with you after watching this chat today?
Sure. So come have an honest conversation at honest2greatness.com. That's honest2greatness.com. There you can take the free 21-question honesty quiz, which will tell you how honest you really are if you're brave enough to find out. And there's a helpful video you get at the end that shows you, what you got with your results and what it all means and so on and so forth. And of course, pick up a copy of Honest to Greatness, share it with all your friends. Don't do it the way we talked about earlier. Yeah, it's a book on honesty. So leave a review. Tell me if you liked it or hated it or wanted to use it as a fire starter in your next barbecue. Totally fine.
Perfect. I will definitely be taking that quiz. I want to know how honest I really am. But thank you, Peter, for sharing your amazing insights with the BookPal community. And thank you to those of you who are able to attend live or are watching this recorded. If you haven't read it already, I highly recommend Peter's book, Honest to Greatness. And we do have 3 signed copies that are going away to some special winners for today. So those winners are Diana A., Julie M., and Daniel J. We have your email addresses and we will reach out to get your mailing addresses for those signed copies. Thank you so much to Peter for signing those. And to purchase 25 copies or more of Honest to Greatness for your team, organization, or community, visit bookpal.com or email sales@bookpal.com. To our live attendees, we will be sending out an email with the recording of this chat next week. So keep your eye out for that email and make sure you're subscribed to our newsletter to be the first to know about other upcoming events. Our next Author Connect will be on August 3rd at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time, where we will be chatting with Adrian Gostick and Chester Elton about their new book, Anxiety at Work. So make sure you're subscribed to our Author Connect newsletter and visit our website to see more. Thank you so much again, Peter, for joining us, and we will see everyone next time. Until then, keep reading, keep learning, and keep growing. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for being honest.